Let's stand by for the updates on the peace negotiations in the Netherlands with Marita Muahe.
For eventual and early signing of the Comprehensive Agreement on Social and Economic Reforms. The guidelines and ground rules shall be formulated by the respective ceasefire committees and include A. Rules governing the presence of armed units and the creation of buffer zones. B. An agreement on prohibited, hostile and provocative acts. And C. Monitoring and verification mechanisms. The parties further agree on the following. Matters regarding a single governmental authority and taxation shall be discussed and resolved in forging the comprehensive agreement on political and constitutional reforms within the framework of the proposed Federal Republic of the Philippines. We will soon proceed to the signing of this agreement, but before we do so, there will be statements from both sides. So let us start with Secretary Jesus Dureza.
Thank you for calling me Jesus. Good afternoon, everyone. This is another step closer to our dream. There are still many steps that we have to work on, but this is a very important step. As we know, we can sign many agreements on paper, but what we see in actuality on the ground is what matters most. And it is there in the ground that we are faced with a lot of challenges. That's the reason why, one of the reasons why we have entered into this is really to start already making the public and all the groups that are on the ground go with us in our final destination of having just and lasting peace in the country. I say again, there was a lot of work here. We congratulate the two ceasefire committees that have worked with this. But the work actually has just begun, because how we are going to see this implemented on the ground and amongst our own two sides is what will actually matter. So congratulations to all, and let's, as I always say, let's all stay the course. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll give the floor to you now, Professor Jose Maria Ciso.
Her Excellency, Special Envoy to the Philippine Peace Process, Elizabeth Slaughter, and the ceasefire negotiators on both sides. I am elated by the result of the negotiations on ceasefire, and I would like to congratulate those who have succeeded in making the agreement on joint ceasefire agreement, on the joint ceasefire. This will go a long way in building trust and confidence and generating the atmosphere for the accelerated advance of negotiations on social and economic reforms, and then political and constitutional reforms. I think the negotiators were wise and flexible enough to make provision for what some people expected would break up the negotiations. You know, when we reach the stage of discussing political and constitutional reforms, we cannot avoid considering the attributes and functions of what may be a single governmental authority. And I think I have indicated in advance that if we co-found the Federal Republic of the Philippines, if GRP and NDFP would co-found the Federal Republic of the Philippines, then there's no question of surrendering to a pre-existing government.
We'll get back to that in a bit. We're turning you back over to the Netherlands with Marita Moahe.
Everyone here, let's thank the Royal Norwegian government for patiently following this process, and hopefully they will bring us together in an atmosphere of peace. Thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you. Mr. Fidalaka Willie, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Slatum, Secretary Teresa, Secretary Benio, and my good friends in the GRP panel, and of course, Joma Sison and the members of my panel, as well as Senior Advisor Luis Elandoni, and everyone. Well, it was really a difficult 3 days. It was touch and go for a while, on both sides, I think. But the NDFP really exercised maximum flexibility without abandoning principles to be able to come out with an agreement to agree, and we agreed to make a joint interim agreement, no? That is what is being signed now. But I think it's a big step. At least we have defined the road forward in making our bilateral ceasefire agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. And also we, as third-party facilitators, would like to congratulate the parties for showing a lot of flexibility and creativity and for making this important step on the road to peace. So we'll now proceed to the signing of this agreement, and I would kindly request that the ceasefire committees and technical committees come and stand behind us to witness the signing.
Sir, pakibilis na. Sir, late tayo. Huwag na naman. Ay, kamay po sana. Dito ah. May request the ambassador. Sir. Select tayo eh. Si Panelo of the Roll na po mamang sa kanan. At pinipilitan na po ang dokumento ceasefire agreement at kanilang
namin ay nagkakaroon na magbubuo ng isang agreement na ay
ngayon ay nagpipirmahan po ang magkabilang panig ng isang napagkasunduan nilang ceasefire agreement. Pinakaport nitong peace talks na ito dito ay sinasagawa dito sa Orville, Netherlands. Sabi nga kanina, no, magkasundo ang dalawang panig.
provocative and hostile acts mula sa mga armadong grupo. Ayon sa
Hello. So, ngayon nga po ay pinirmahan yung magkabilang grupo dito po sa ceasefire agreement na napagkasunduan nila. At okay, so now the two panels, the two negotiating panels are now signing the agreement on the ceasefire, which is the fruit of this 6 days of peace talk. It's actually 5 days peace talk being held here in Orville, Netherlands. We can see on the screen now signing Julie De Lima, Luis Halandoni, Fidel Agcawili, Benito Tianzon, Connie Ledesma, and Astelo Farina on the side of the National Democratic Front panel. And on the side of the government peace panel, we can see Secretary Silvestre Bello III, Secretary Jesus Dureza, Hernani Braganza, Angela Trinidad, Rene Sarmiento, Antonia Arellano, and Edgardo Pamintuan on the side of the government negotiating panel. So it's a good day today as they have come to an agreement to finally reconcile the differences between the two drafts submitted by the two panels, because each panel submitted their own drafts, the side of the NDFP and as well as the side of the government peace panel. And afterwards, after the submission of the drafts, each of them reviewed each other's drafts and then they made the revision. Actually, this morning they held a separate small informal meetings wherein they both discussed the revisions. They made clarifications on the points which are not so clear for each of the members, and then after the meeting, they again convened into a small meeting with the two panels, and then after that they went directly into the negotiating room, which is out of the sight of the media persons. So there they drafted the final agreement on the ceasefire. So this is an interim joint ceasefire which they are signing right now. And as Secretary Jesus Dureza says, hopefully this would pave the way to the end goal of these peace talks, which is to have a lasting peace. Now they are now shaking hands. This is Professor Jose Maria Sison and Secretary Jesus Dureza finally shook hands with the signed agreement in each other's hands. And the other members of the panel and the other members of the of each team behind their back to witness this historical event. Thank you. As per the NDFP press release, it says NDFP and the government peace panel agree to forge interim joint ceasefire agreement. Now it's the turn of Fidel Agkawili with Secretary Silvestre Bello III, who shook hands. Everybody, it's a festive mood today here in Netherlands for the peace talks, as they have come to an agreement. It was a difficult 5 days. You know, each panels had differences, and it was really it's really a good thing that they come to forge and to finally agree on the joint ceasefire agreement. In the middle is Miss Elizabeth Aslatum, the special envoy for the peace process. Other personalities here include Casa Toro Campo, the Tiamzon couples, of course, and the other members of the government peace panel. The press statement says that the National Democratic Front of the Philippines and the government of the Republic of the Philippines today agreed to work together to forge an interim joint ceasefire agreement. They formalized their commitments through a document entitled Agreement on an Interim Joint Ceasefire, which was signed this afternoon by NDFP Panel Chair Fidel Agkawili and GRP Panel Chair Silvestre Bello III. The interim joint ceasefire shall be signed simultaneous to or immediately after the signing of the Comprehensive Agreement on Social and Economic Reforms, or the CASER. CASER expected to be finished within the year. The interim joint ceasefire or the comprehensive joint ceasefire agreement shall be effective until a permanent ceasefire is forged as part of the comprehensive agreement on end of hostilities and disposition of forces. Both parties agreed to direct their respective ceasefire committees to meet even in between formal talks to discuss, formulate, and finalize the guidelines and ground rules for the implementation of the agreement. Professor Jose Maria Sison just passed by in front of us. He is now leaving the hallway as he is not feeling that well. Anyway, to continue with the press release, the comprehensive joint ceasefire agreement is expected to be more stable than the previous unilateral ceasefires that existed from August 2016 to January 2017. The prospective ceasefire's guidelines and ground rules shall govern the presence of armed units and elements of both parties in local communities and the creation of buffer zones. They shall include an agreement on what constitutes prohibited, hostile, and provocative acts. They will also provide for a ceasefire monitoring and verification mechanism to oversee the ceasefire's implementation and handle complaints and alleged violations. The matter of a single governmental authority and taxation shall be discussed and resolved in forging the comprehensive agreement on political and constitutional reforms, the third substantive agenda of the peace negotiations. So right now we're through with the signing, so back to the studio.
That was Marita Moahe covering the CPP and PA-NDF talks in the Netherlands.